As I have spent nearly 500 hours in Cyberpunk 2077 exploring cut content areas of Night City which you can't access, it still surprises me that there's many more things to find and that I actually end up discovering a lot of these just randomly. One of these is a very specific location which is actually featured in the E3 48-minute gameplay demo for 2077. In this gameplay demo we meet up with Jackie and we can see that just before we get in Dexter Deshawn's car, we are actually right next to this gigantic building. This building has a bouncer on the outside, it has bright lights in this E3 build of the game, so one can assume that it is some kind of nightclub. This is a little bit confusing just to begin with though, because as you can see on the top of the entrance is Cali Express, which if you know is essentially like a small shop chain in the world of Cyberpunk. So this place is usually more akin to like a 7-Eleven, you know, like a small convenience store rather than a fully fledged nightclub, which is a little bit confusing because clearly we have a bouncer. So I thought I'd go check this out in the release build of 2077 to see if this place actually does still exist, and it does. It just looks very different and makes things a lot more confusing. The first thing which I do want to point out is that when you get into Dexter Deshawn's car, these stands are not present. You can notice that these windows, which in the E3 build of the game are actually lit up, there does actually appear to be some kind of interior, or at least a lot more going on than what we have in the release build of the game, because if you compare it to how it looks now, you can see that these windows have been boarded up. They've been given these kind of metal shutters to stop you from looking in, and generally speaking the whole facade of this building has lost a lot of its bright colours, which, you know, did imply it was some kind of nightclub. Take particular note of these lights as well, which you can see in the E3 version of this building. You can see that they are actually 3D models. There's quite a few of them, and this seems to imply that in this version of 2077 this building had somewhat of an interior. I don't know if it was accessible, but at the very least it had a lot more than what we have in the release build of the game. So with that covered, I know you want to get inside this place, so that is exactly what we're going to be doing. You can clip behind these doors and you find yourself in a pretty broken area. This place is very much suffering with a culling pandemic. The more you move, the more things begin to flicker in and out of existence, so we're going to have to work with it. What you will notice though is that this building does have a very basic interior, and I'm talking extremely basic. We have a walkable floor which you can actually use, but this suddenly disappears around this left side of the building, and I'm just guessing this is an extension of the pavement which has just been stretched along this building. So, you know, there's nothing ridiculous going on with the inside. You can look out through the windows. I don't know if that means anything. Now, you remember those little lights I told you to remember about? Here we are looking at one of those lights. This is the only light which has survived the complete and utter gutting of this interior. This light is basically clipping through two added walls to this building. You can see that the exterior has this kind of weird little limbo space in between another wall, and then in between that wall is another wall, and then on the other side of that wall is the actual wall. So, you know, bear with me. This place is layered. There's a lot of layers on the go. It seems like this wall here was added, which is why these lanterns are indeed still in the game, or well, one of them is still very much in the game, and interestingly they're still lit up as well. But interestingly, this is the only example I can find of one of these three-dimensional lights being left in this abandoned or disused interior. If we refer back to the E3 footage, we can see that there are dozens of these lights scattered, and this little guy here is basically the only remnant we have left of it. I know this might sound really ridiculous and finicky, but at the end of the day it proves that something was definitely going on here, even if it was just set dressing. And it also proves that these walls were added to the building, so the actual fundamental structure of this place changed. And interestingly, the interior actually changed, not the exterior, although it did. these walls are only seen from the inside of the building. So why? Why does that make sense? How does that work? I don't fucking know. Also linking on to this, we have this really weird kind of rudimentary roof, which can be seen, which almost just looks like floor tiles that have been kind of awkwardly copied and pasted to make like a really butchered and awkward roof. But I think ultimately, even though this space is very much basic, it's extremely broken, particularly in reference to these roofs. I think it is pretty clear that there was supposed to be a pretty basic structure going on inside of this building, particularly with this roof which has been added. It almost looks like it is covering the actual roof. And the final thing which I want to show you in relation to this cut nightclub is something pretty cool. If we actually fly up into the rest of the building, which you can see is pretty goddamn big, but there's actually nothing going on. But interestingly, there is this. A big grey rectangle. I don't know what this thing is supposed to be. It's very, very interesting. I think first of all, it's pretty coincidental that this gigantic grey rectangle is featured directly above an interior which saw some kind of change throughout pre-release versions of 2077. This is likely something left over from perhaps when there was an interior in this lower part of the building, maybe a lift that went up to this big grey square. And I think it's extremely coincidental as well that this pretty much ties up perfectly with these old original NCART designs, which, bearing in mind, throughout this area have these vertical bridges that actually connect them to make like pedestrian access points. It's pretty cool that there is one of these which almost looks like a corridor which could lead out to the NCART. Here is Ellison Plaza NCART station, and right next to it is actually this entirely locked off area, which is, would you look at that, a vertical bridge. This is just a little pedestrian access point that has basically just hit a set of fake doors, but you can click behind here and see that this is pretty much in the same shape as that big grey rectangle over there. It's very, very similar, likely something connecting to NCART, so that would imply that maybe this building was pretty important. It had some kind of relevance to the story or side content or something of the sort. I'm not 100% sure. But ultimately, this building, whatever you want to call it, in the release build of the game is extremely gutted. There's barely anything left of it, but it has a lot of interesting pre-release Cyberpunk elements, like all of these footbridges connecting it to the NCPD roof, to the NCART station. And the final thing which I want to point out is that there's a lot of these below deck posters on the side of the building, and I originally thought that below deck was this place, that this is the nightclub which was taken out of the game. But doing a little research, below deck is actually supposed to be a underwater aquarium that's been turned into a club. It's somewhere in Japantown, but is actually not featured in the game whatsoever. It's in itself a cut nightclub. So this is something which I want to look into, even if there's not a great deal of information. And with that said and done, I do believe that is the end of today's video. But guys, what do you think? Do you think this place was supposed to have something going on? Do you think this is a side effect of Cyberpunk's dogshit development, or do you think this is just CDPR trying to build a comprehensive and believable open world? Let me know in the comment section of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll catch you lot in a bit.